Imagine a world where a single man owns the sun, the moon, and your very soul. A king so powerful, he does not just demand your taxes, he demands your worship. Deep in the shifting sands of ancient Mesopotamia, a name still whispers through the ruins of Babylon: Nimrod. He was the first person in history to look at the heavens and declare himself a god. For 400 years, he ruled with an iron fist, convinced that no power on earth or in the sky could ever challenge his throne. But history has a way of silencing the loudest voices with the smallest of sounds. This is the investigation into a clash that shook the foundations of the ancient world. A battle between a tyrant who claimed to be the creator and a young man who knew the truth. This is the story of Ibrahim, alayhi salam, and the fall of the king who thought he was God. Long before the empire was built on blood, Nimrod was known as a just ruler. But as his kingdom expanded from the north to the south, his heart turned to stones. He did not just build cities like Nineveh and Calah. He built an ideology of absolute submission. In the squares of Babylon, statues of gold, silver, and bronze were erected. But the greatest idol was the king himself. To live in his city, you had to bow to his image or face a swift and brutal death. The people did not just fear him, they were taught that he controlled the very life and death of every subject. The temples became factories of idols, churning out gods of wood and stone for a population that had forgotten the stars. But then, the king had a dream. It was a vision so terrifying it made the man who feared nothing wake up drenched in sweat. Blinding light descended from the heavens, a light so intense that it extinguished the sun, the moon, and every star in the sky. From the shadows of this light, a hand reached out and threw Nimrod from his throne. The king's astrologers and magicians gathered in the darkest room of the palace to decode the nightmare. Their conclusion was a death sentence for thousands. A boy would soon be born who would destroy the king's religion and his empire. Nimrod did not hesitate. He ordered the slaughter of every male infant born in Babylon. 100,000 children were murdered, and the Euphrates River ran red with the blood of the innocent. In the middle of this massacre, a woman named Amathli felt the first pains of labor. Her husband, Azar, was Nimrod's own idol maker, a man loyal to the king who would sacrifice anything for status to save her child. Amathli fled into the darkness, her bare feet bleeding as she reached a cold, silent cave outside the city. There, in the shadows, Ibrahim alayhi salam was born. He did not cry. He only watched with eyes that seemed to hold a light of their own to protect him. His mother left him in the deepest corner of that cave, returning only in secret to feed him. But sources say Ibrahim alayhi salam was never truly alone. Legend tells of an angel who fed the child milk and honey from his own fingers, guarding the boy while the king's executioners searched the streets above. Ibrahim alayhi salam grew up in that silence, isolated from the corruption of the city. While other children were taught to bow to statues, Ibrahim alayhi salam was learning the language of the universe. When he finally stepped out of the cave as a young man, he was shocked by what he saw. He walked through the markets and saw people weeping before blocks of wood and pouring oil on cold stones. He found his own father, Azar, in a workshop, carefully carving ears onto a statue. Ibrahim alayhi salam asked a simple question that hit like a hammer: "Can this thing hear you?" Azar's only response was anger, a warning to never speak against the gods of Babylon. Ibrahim alayhi salam began a lonely investigation into the nature of power. One night, he climbed a hill to escape the smell of incense and idol worship. He saw the star Venus rising, a light so bright the people offered it sacrifices. For a moment he wondered if this was the Lord of the worlds. But then the star sank below the horizon. "I do not love those that set," he whispered. Then came the moon, massive and silver, commanding the night. But it, too, faded when the sun rose. Finally, the sun appeared in all its glory, the biggest god of the Babylonian peoples. But as the evening came, even the sun bowed its head and disappeared into the dirt. Ibrahim alayhi salam realized then that anything that follows a law, anything that is bound by time and movement, cannot be a god's. He turned his face away from the sky and toward the one who created the stars themselves. The tension in Babylon reached a breaking point during the city's annual festival. As the entire population emptied out to celebrate in the fields, Ibrahim alayhi salam walked into the main temple. He stood before a forest of silver and copper statues, looking at the food the people had left for them. "Why don't you eat?" he asked the silence. Then he raised an axe. One by one, he smashed the gods of Babylon into dust. He broke every single one, except for the largest gold idol standing on the central throne. Around the neck of that giant statue, he hung his axe and walked away. When the people returned and saw the carnage, a roar of fury went up. They knew only one man would dare commit such a crime. Ibrahim alayhi salam was dragged before the leaders of the community, his hands bound. When they accused him of destroying their gods, he pointed to the large idol and said, "The big one did it. Why don't you ask him?" For a second, the crowd was paralyzed by their own logic. They knew the statue could not speak. They knew it could not move. Ibrahim alayhi salam's words exposed their reality. They were worshipping things that could not even protect themselves from a single man with an axe. But truth often makes people more violent, not more wise. Nimrod returned from his military campaigns to find his authority challenged by a youngster. Ibrahim alayhi salam was brought to the palace, a place where every visitor was forced to prostrate. Ibrahim alayhi salam stood tall. When Nimrod demanded to know why he did not bow, Ibrahim alayhi salam replied that he only bowed to the one who gives life and death. Nimrod laughed. It was the laugh of a man who believed he was the ultimate master. To prove his point, the king ordered 2 prisoners brought forward. He executed one and freed the other. "See," Nimrod boasted, "I also give life and death." Ibrahim alayhi salam did not argue the semantics of murder. He shifted the battlefield to the cosmic. "My Lord brings the sun from the east," Ibrahim alayhi salam said. "If you are a god, then bring it from the west." Ibrahim alayhi salam refused them all. His focus was not on the fire, but on the one who created the fire. "Allah is enough for me," he whispered. The lever was pulled. Ibrahim alayhi salam was launched into the heart of the flames. The crowd cheered, and Nimrod watched from his tower, waiting for the smell of burning flesh. But inside the inferno, a command was issued that bypassed every law of physics. "O fire, be cool and peaceful for Ibrahim alayhi salam." The flames did not go out, but they lost their power to burn. The ropes holding Ibrahim alayhi salam's hands were consumed, but his skin remained untouched. He sat in the middle of the fire as if he were in a garden, praising the Lord of the worlds. When he finally walked out of the ashes, his face was glowing with a light that made the Babylonian gods look like the dust they were. Nimrod was shaken, but his pride was a fortress. He claimed that he had allowed the God of Ibrahim alayhi salam to save him, but he refused to bow. Instead, he doubled down on his defiance. He decided he would go to the heavens to kill the God he could not see. He built a tower so high that those at the top saw the city below as a nest of ants. From the summit, he He shot an arrow into the sky. By divine decree, the arrow returned to earth stained with blood. Nimrod raised the bloody shaft for the crowds to see, screaming that he had wounded the god of the heavens. It was the ultimate delusion. The end did not come with a lightning bolt or an earthquake. It came with something far smaller. Nimrod challenged Ibrahim alayhi salam to a battle, telling him to bring his god's army. Nimrod gathered his thousands of armored soldiers, their shields gleaming in the sun. Ibrahim alayhi salam arrived alone. "Where is your army?" the king laughed. Ibrahim alayhi salam replied that they were already here. Suddenly the sky turned black, but not with clouds. An army of gnats and mosquitoes descended upon the plains of Babylon. They were so numerous the soldiers could not breathe. These tiny creatures began to eat the flesh of the men who thought they were invincible, leaving nothing but bones in the dust. Nimrod fled to his palace, locking the heavy iron doors, thinking he could hide from a plague. But a single tiny mosquito, described as being crippled, found a hole in the door. It flew into the king's chamber and entered his nose. It traveled deep into the brain of the man who called himself God. There, it began to move. The pain was so agonizing that Nimrod could not stand the sound of his own thoughts. The only way he could find a moment of relief was to be hit on the head. The king of the world, who had ruled for 4 centuries, now paid his servants to strike him with hammers. He wore a crown of pain for 40 days, begging for harder and harder blows, until finally his skull shattered under the weight of his own arrogance. Babylon remained, but the god king was gone, defeated by a creature he wouldn't have even noticed on his sleeve. Ibrahim alayhi salam left the city, embarking on a journey that would lead him to the barren valley of Mecca, to the building of the Kaaba, and to the ultimate tests of faith with his son Ismail. He left behind a lesson that echoes through every century. Power is a shadow that disappears when the sun sets, but truth is the light that creates the sun. Nimrod's name became a warning of how the tallest towers are often brought down by the smallest of things. In the end, the man who claimed to rule everything proved he could not even govern a single insect. True power does not come from the ability to kill, but from the strength to submit to the one who gives life. When the hammers finally fell silent in the palace of Babylon, only one truth remained standing: no king is higher than the one who created the king. Subscribe for more powerful stories. Like and follow. Assalamu alaikum.